starting crappy. It might be a strange concept to think about when you're coming up to the end of the year, but actually I think that this is a really, really important thing to think about. It seems counterintuitive to be talking about doing business effectively and then to be talking about the idea of starting something in a poor or crappy way, whereas actually the concept's quite interesting and I think it's really, really important. And the guy that I got it from was called Guy Kawasaki, and he was the chief evangelist for Apple in the late 80s, early 90s. He kind of played his role in Apple becoming what it is today. And he was a venture capitalist, he's an MBA, and he's also done a lot of sort of business teaching. He's an excellent speaker, and he's written a book called The Art of the Start, where he sums up all of his ideas about starting anything from a business through to a social enterprise or a charity or whatever it is that you want to start, or any organisation of any kind. And he sums up all of this stuff to start crappy. And what does this actually mean? Let's kind of break it down a little bit. It basically means to just get going with the concept. If you look at what a lot of these big companies do, a lot of the big technology companies, a lot of successful organisations, they get something to market as quickly as possible. So, I mean, you might see on like a lot of software applications, you have a version 1, a version 1.1, version 1.2. So essentially what they do is they get a minimal viable product of whatever it is that's the service they want to sell, whatever it is that's the product that they want to sell, and then they go out there and they test it in the marketplace. What does this mean for you in your business if you're not selling a product? Well, if you've got a service or you want to create a new kind of way of packaging up your service, you can actually get a minimal viable product and get it to market as quickly as possible. And rather than getting caught up in making your product perfect, the idea of perfection is a complete lie. It doesn't exist. Nothing is perfect. So the more you pursue that, the more frustrated you become, the more frustrated your team becomes, and the less time you actually spend in the marketplace getting feedback about your product or idea. So what this has kind of brought me to is it's brought me to a place where now what I tend to do is I get an idea, I get a concept, I get it down on paper, and I get it out into the marketplace as quickly as possible. So this might mean doing a video and thinking about, do I need to plan and do my video for the rest of the day, and then I realise that the day's gone by and I haven't recorded a video. Or it might come down to writing a blog post and you're so worried about getting the blog post correct and is your grammar correct and all this kind of stuff that you just don't get it written. Or it might be the product that you wanted to create, but you've been thinking about it for the last 36 months and you've been planning it and talking about it, but really you have no product. Or it might be the book that you're trying to write and it's been in the planning stage for the last year and a half, but you have no book. So whether it's a book, whether it's a product, whether it's repackaging your service, the philosophy of starting crappy means basically get what is the most stripped down, basic version of what it is that you want to do, go out into the marketplace and find a customer. And if you relate it also to, there's a couple of other guys that I highly recommend. One is Derek Sivers, who talks a lot about this, about getting a product to market and going and testing and getting feedback, go and deliver a service to someone. Seth Godin also talks about this as well, where he talks about getting a product and going and selling it. I mean, he used the example of, you know, if you want to sell stuff to skateboarders, go and find some skateboarders down the end of your street and create value for them, so in exchange for some money. And so when you're thinking about business, everyone comes up with these huge fanciful ideas, whereas the reality is to just get something on the ground as quickly as possible. Well, let's take another example. Let's take Airbnb. So when Airbnb started, it was a guy who was living in a flat. He needed to get some more money, so they started renting out mattress space. And then he started trying to actually think, oh, well, this could be quite good for people renting out their houses. But the reality is that you wouldn't get any customers because there were no people advertising their houses, and you couldn't get any people advertising their houses because you didn't have any customers. So he had to build the system one at a time. So he got a minimal viable product, a version 1.0, and he went to market and got feedback and developed and kept on going and kept on trying and kept on selling. So these overnight successes that you see all started something humble. They all started as something simple. Or if you take the example of Wiggle, which is one of the biggest online bike shops, you know, and that was started in the garage. So version 1.0 was them just in a garage, just selling stuff to people, and it builds from there. But the people who are talking about doing stuff and never get around to it, they end up with no result whatsoever. So rather than trying to be perfect, start crappy.